UGREEN has been a longtime sponsor of the NerdNest, and they are the only chargers that I use to keep all of my tech topped off. Their latest charger is the UGREEN Uno Charger 100 watt. It does the exact same thing of all of their other 100 watt chargers do, but this one does it with style. This guy looks like a little robot, and someone might see it on your desk and never realize it's not just an adorable robot, but it's also equipped with 3 USB-C ports, 1 USB-A port, and it can charge up to 4 devices at the same time. While charging, the screen on the front displays little faces. You can also use 100 watt fast charging on 2 of its ports, and that means it can bring an iPhone 15 Pro from 0 to 60 in just 30 minutes. When you're done charging, it turns back into an adorable little robot to decorate your desk. They also have this fantastic UGREEN Uno 2-in-1 magnetic charger. I keep it on my desk and I use it to keep my phone topped off as well as my AirPod Pros. It features the same adorable robot theme and screen, but it's MagSafe compatible. But if you aren't interested in chargers with personality, UGREEN also makes tons of other charging products, including more traditional chargers, power banks, cables, and more. So check out the links in the description down below, and a huge thanks to UGREEN for being a longtime sponsor here at the NerdNest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the NerdNest. It's me, it's Jimmy, it's Rich. We have a lot to talk about, but first I just want to say hi to the guys. Jimmy, what have you been up to, man?
Just making a ton of videos. After what do you call it? Summer Game Fest, when everyone was telling me how much they like Deck Ready, I was like, okay, I gotta keep up with my schedule here. Gotta stop letting it go by the wayside. So I've been doing 2 to 3 Deck Readies and 3 PS Readies, so it's been pretty packed.
I love that.
That is a lot. I don't know how you have the time to get that kind of output, but you know what? I think that you're doing a great job, man.
Thank you.
100%.
What's going on, Rich?
Not too much. I just got finished playing Drawful with the kids. I know I've done that a couple weeks now, but it's always a good time to play Drawful with the kids and the wife. It's so much fun.
Cool. I can't remember the name of the game, but there's a game there's no drawing involved, but it's the same kind of thing where you have like a device that's on a TV and everybody uses their phones as a controller.
Yeah.
It's called Use Your Words. Have you ever checked out Use Your Words?
But I will now.
Yeah,
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Definitely check that one out. They have some cool games in it where you are playing motorcycles that are going by my house, where they show you like a clip from an old movie, and you have to like say what they're talking about.
Nice.
Oh, that's interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's always like really goofy, like super old, like 1940s films and stuff like that. So I figured that one's really fun. Did you win at Drawful?
I won the first game, and then my son won the second game. So we spread it out. But yeah, I just added Use Your Words to my wish list, so I'll definitely pick this one up.
Wait for a sale. It's fun, but it doesn't have the come back to it again and again and again that Jackbox stuff tends to have.
For sure.
But hey, we are here to talk about video games, and one of the reasons that I reached out to Jimmy and said, Jimmy, you got to get on the show, because he has a channel called PS Ready, which is all about the PlayStation, and we've got some big PlayStation news this episode. Last episode, we talked about the rumors of the PS5 Pro, and then the PS5 Pro got announced, and we were just talking in the pre-show that we don't know how good of a job Sony's doing selling this thing to end users, and everybody keeps talking about the price, which I think is important to talk about, but until we actually get it in our hands, it's hard to decide if it's $700 is worth it. But that's what we're going to start with today, is talking about the PS5 Pro, whether or not it's worth, whether or not we're interested in it, and is Sony flying too close to the sun? So Jimmy, start us off with, what was your initial reaction to finding out the price of the PS5 Pro at $700?
I was mostly surprised that I didn't like the price. I assumed it would be 6 or 700, so like that didn't shock me, but I was shocked that they only have one model that doesn't come with a disk drive. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like I mean, they're bucking the trend that they started with the beginning of the generation. They're bucking the trend that they started with or continued with the PS5 Slim. And I mean, like, obviously they just didn't want an $800, like a $799 option out there. So at least it seems like they had a little bit of foresight on like people's reaction. But I mean, if they didn't expect the backlash to a $700 mid-gen refresh console, the marketing people there are like crazy. They got to maybe reevaluate who's on that team at this point, because I mean, just well, I mean, we're gonna talk about it, right? Like the marketing and everything,
Yeah.
but the single SKU $700. I was like, oh man, people are gonna hate this, and then they did, which is not great, not great when you have, you know, the big slam of Concord, and then you finally like recover it very quickly with Astrobot, and then I'd argue that like just from a like audience size perspective, I feel like the amount of eyes on the PS5 Pro price like scandal is a lot bigger than Concord. Like there are so many people who don't even know Concord existed, and like which is one of the
Yeah,
biggest
this is
problems
true.
with that game. Like that game only reached like a, you know, small niche of the audience, but the PS5 Pro hit everybody. Like I saw articles from newspapers and everything, you know, like it got out there, and then they gave the console to CNET, like an early preview, which is another really weird move in my opinion. They keep going for these like boutique brand magazines, like they did Wired for the PS5. I think they did Wired again for the PS5 Slim, and then now they're going over to CNET. They're just completely like ignoring IGN, Eurogamer, The Verge, like all these other outlets in favor of these like trade magazines. Their whole strategy this generation is bizarre to me. Like they clearly want it to be like an iPhone level audience perception that they have, and it's just I don't think they're ever going to get there because they're selling a game console.
It's funny, both like Nintendo and Sony want to chase like that Apple model in their own way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, kind of just be yourself.
Yeah,
What were you-
Nintendo, it works with them because they're, you know, they chase a aggressive price point from the jump, you know, like
Yes,
they're selling the Switch, what was it, like 350 when it came out, 400 or 290. What was the Switch at launch?
I want to say $299.
Yeah, 299.
Yeah, I think
and
it was
then
300. Yeah.
you do
Yeah.
the light, which is great. Like when the light came out, I bought a light because I wanted that like DS style like dedicated handheld experience again. Same hardware in there and everything. And then, you know, Switch OLED's 350, and it's a great piece of hardware, and like it's all sub $400. So like it's easy for them to do multiple refreshes. I mean, they did that with the 3DS and DS too, like with the XLs and everything. So
Yeah, Nintendo always brings in things at much lower costs because they have a tendency to use older stuff. You
Yep.
know, like they always, like when the Switch launched at $300, it was already running off the NVIDIA Tegra 1 chip that was already pretty old at the time.
right.
So the thing is Nintendo is really good at optimizing their games and making their games not take a huge footprint on your storage,
Yeah.
run really well without, like, look really good without requiring too much hardware, like power. And like that's something that Nintendo's always been really good at. That's never been something that Sony's been trying to do.
Yeah, I love Nintendo. I mean, I don't talk about obviously on PS Ready because it's so PlayStation focused, but the Steam Deck kind of replaced a lot of my Switch love. And then just like, you know, the Switch is aging, and from a performance perspective, it seems like the cracks are starting to show. Like if you watch some of the footage of that new Zelda game, it runs just like Link's Awakening, where you know, like if you're in the indoor dungeons, it'll be like 60 FPS, pretty much locked. But then if you go in the outdoor world, like when you're transitioning between scenes and like tiles and everything, like tanks, it's like it's weird that they even chase 60 FPS on it. So I'm definitely in on the Switch too, because again, they're probably going to chase that like lower price point, and it's like that's a device where you're like, oh, you know, may as well just grab this if I see it at the store shelf. Like it's still a lot of money, but like you can impulse buy a Switch a lot easier than you can impulse buy a PlayStation, especially at $700. Like no one's impulse buying a PS5 Pro.
Yeah. No kidding.
I agree with that. So go ahead, Rich.
Well, there are a couple like angles that I was thinking about this from, and obviously, I did a video on this, so I thought about it then, but even now, I've thought about it some more, and there are a couple things. So number one, you mentioned like trade magazines and sort of like Sony's marketing approach, who they're talking to, and I've unfortunately I can't credit them. I don't remember who was this, but I saw a tweet early on in the timeline that was like, why didn't they like go to Digital Foundry, right?
I know.
Like
Yeah.
immediately, and that would have been like we're seeing now some of the Digital Foundry information trickle through, Richard Ledbetter comparing it to a RTX 4070, right? The NVIDIA RTX 4070, which is a lot pricier than what we were initially comparing it to, which was the AMD 6700 or 7700, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so like the 4070 is considerably more CPU power or GPU power, but like he made a good point about like the ray tracing, the upscaling technology being better than what exists in current AMD GPUs. So that just like, I think that stresses the point about marketing, right? Like I don't think they did a good job marketing this. I think, one of the things I said, which I still feel, right, like is that we hold Mark Cerny in such high regard, the tech heads, right? That like, yes, he's built up so much goodwill that yes, it's smart to include him and feature him in this presentation. But on that same token, if what he shows us is not impressive, we hold him in such regard that to us, that means the PlayStation 5 Pro is not impressive.
It's like
right?
a poorly executed good idea. I talked about this in the video I posted today, but like, I mean, showing some of the games they showed, like where we have it on the list here, like Rebirth, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because it looks like Play-Doh on the PS5 in 60 FPS mode. So it's like you have a direct comparison of a next gen only release. But like showing The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, like that's like people are already arguing over The Last of Us Part 2 remastered just being the PS5 patch repackaged onto a disc with the DLC mode, like the Left Behind, or what do you call it? No Escape or something, like the roguelite mode. So when you've already got an argument there, when you're releasing it on the PlayStation 5, which already had a free patch that made it look and run great to begin with, like that is the last game I would show in a like technical
100%.
breakdown like this. And like it's insane to me that they have multiple studios, like Santa Monica Studio, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Sucker Punch. I mean, all of these studios have been working on games for between 3 and 5 years. I get that, they've gotten bit in the past by showing games too early and too much, but like it's getting to a breaking point where there's no reality to me in which they shouldn't have done this, like the PS Portal last year, where they had a showcase and then they had the Jim Ryan delivery, at the end of the video where he's like, hey, here's the new hardware. We got the Pulse Explorer, the Pulse Elite. We got this new handheld coming. Get excited for that. This should have been the end point of a big showcase or state of play where they're showing these games that are in development for that long and say, okay, now we've given you justification for this price point. But if you're coming out with a console at that price point and you're showing a remastered PS4 game, like it just exacerbates the problem everyone has with the PS5 who owns one right now, which is that I bought this PS4 Pro and you guys are already introducing the Pro model of that without giving me anything to really feel like this console I bought 4 years ago has been taken advantage of. Like they're so far ahead in terms of like strategy with the hardware. They've like completely outpaced their software releases, and it's like it's all unforced errors, like shoot yourself in the foot moments, which is why I'm so critical of their marketing. Like if no one on that team came to whoever is on the hardware side announcing this stuff and said, hey, we're gonna have a state of play very soon where we're gonna show off all these first party games we're working on, maybe we should hold this back, and then they say, no, let's just have this 9-minute video where we show PS4 games running on it. Like I don't
and they put them side by side, just like this is on PS5, this is on PS5 Pro, and I look at it and I'm like,
and they do it through YouTube.
Super compressed YouTube video. I can't see the difference between them. And that doesn't help sell the thing.
Yeah, and like you're talking about Digital Foundry not getting access. The only thing I can think of as to why is because they were so aggressive about talking about the leaks. Like they were talking about the full spec leaks and everything and how it might perform. But like when I was working for Austin Evans and we got to do the Xbox Series X reveal, they were also there, and they got the same hands-on as we did. They got to see games running, and that was like super beneficial to the like lead up to the Series X, because they had all that info and they could deliver it to consumers. Like, I understand that they're journalists, so it's like you can't expect them to market for you, but if you're delivering a good product, which is like what it seems they're doing with the PS5 Pro, it only benefits you to have someone with technical know-how like that get to go hands-on with it, instead of like CNET bragging about 8K Gran Turismo. Like, no one cares about Gran Turismo and 8K. Like, they've been pushing they've always been like that, where they did like 1080i, I think, with Gran Turismo 4, like on the PS2. They've always been trying to push it. It's just weird. I guess they come at it like, oh, well, we've got YouTubers out there who are like Digital Foundry, who are talking to the hardcore audience, so we need to get people there from this like more, general audience. But like, invite 2 people to this hands-on preview event, like, you don't just need to go with CNET or just go with Wired. Like, I have never gone to wired.com outside of the 2 times that they had PS5 info. It's like, this is bizarre.
That's funny. Hey, Bill, can I share something related to this?
Yeah, go nuts.
All right, cool. So I'm sharing my screen now. So this is I will say this is a good tweet, but I also disagree with it, right? So this is from @BallMatthew, and he says $700 was the right price. Pro products are supposed to generate positive margin dollars by selling to price insensitive super users, not have greater or comparable losses than entry SKUs, nor are they intended to drive install base growth. Same reason DualSense Edge is $200. So the DualSense Edge is a good point there too, and I want to come back to that. But like, I think he raises a good point. I just think that where gaming is right now is not where gaming was like 5-6 years ago, right? Like, this sort of presupposes that like Switch 2 is not a competitor to PlayStation 5, and it presupposes that PC gaming is not a competitor to PC5 or PS5. And I think that like, to a degree, that's true, right? Like, those are those are 2 separate audiences, but like, those audiences feel like they're converging very quickly, right? Especially on PC, right? Like, PC to PS5, those audiences feel like they're converging very quickly. And I was someone that was primarily a console gamer, and so like, PlayStation was the console I primarily used between PS2, PS3, and PS4. I was primarily using those consoles, but over time, through that time, I started to use PC more and more. And no, you can't get a comparable computer for $700. But once you start to factor in the stand and the drive, well, you're starting to get a little close, right? Like, it's a little close. What I would say is probably closer for comfort than Sony would like, right? And that's where like, people start to have those questions, like, maybe I should just throw in a little extra, build a PC, and I'll be all right. And again, the convenience factor is driving this too. Interestingly, I'll drop it after this, but interestingly, I can speak to this later. The Acer folks, the folks that are making the Nitro Blaze 7, the new handheld, so they said that basically they don't have huge optimism in the handheld market. Part of the reason that it's so difficult for them and other like laptop manufacturers is because Valve set the price so low, right? Like, they just can't compete with that with those margins, because Valve is making bank on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, the tweet that you shared is it's very similar to what I said in my video, where I was like, if you're okay with like the cheapest Steam Deck is $400, although right now there's a sale, so you can get it a lot lower than that. We'll talk about that later in the show. The cheapest one is like $400 or $350. I can't remember off the top of my head what's the 64 gigabyte LCD, or what's the cheapest Steam Deck right now?
Technically $300 on sale, but yeah, like 400 is still
400 is the regular price, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're okay with that price, and then being able to also buy the most expensive Steam Deck at $650, then I think it's fair to say you should also be okay with buying a PS5 at, what's the PS5 Slim is $550?
500 and 450.
450 is
Yeah,
the
450
for
for
digital.
digital.
okay. So then you should be okay with 450 and 700 as
Mhm.
those prices because it's pretty much the same scale up. And I understand people not wanting to spend 700. That's perfectly reasonable. I can understand somebody
Right.
wanting the PS5 Pro to be cheaper. Again, reasonable. But for people to like drag Sony while at the same time they're like, oh man, this super expensive OLED Steam Deck is amazing for 650. I'm like, okay, really? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it is weird, and they're also not getting rid of the current PS5. Like, if you don't want to spend 700 on a Pro, go
Right.
spend. And you could buy a refurbished one now for $100 off, which is cool, and that's like a 12-month manufacturer warranty. Like, there are options. I mean, like, if you're just trying to live in this world where you get the best performance for the least amount of money, you're always going to be disappointed, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know how else to put it. And then the PC side of the fence, like, yeah, building a PC for like around the same performance is going to be close to the same price. I still think you're going to end up paying more at the end of the day. There's so much stuff that isn't factored in when people talk about that. It's you lose the convenience factor, which is massive. Like, I have a lot of friends here in Michigan. Like in LA, everyone's like kind of tuned in, right? Like everyone's kind of got a gaming PC and a console. You talk to a lot of people who play like games like Valorant or like Apex Legends, Hearthstone, like all these like, online live service style games. Like it's pretty tuned in there. But here in Michigan, like in my friend group, like me and my best friend are really into like PC and PS5. We've always been like that. And we have friends who like saw the PC and they're like, that's cool. So they put all this money into building their PC and they just sold it within 2 to 3 weeks because, the whole having to figure out the settings, having to figure out what VSync is, using Windows, like that is like a bar too high for a lot of people, and the difficulty of using it as a living room console. Like for us, that's easy because we've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
But like, there is a massive convenience factor to hitting the PlayStation button. Your TV automatically turns on and the game you shut it off when you were playing is still running. Like compared to a PC where you got to boot it up, you got to load up the game, hope the settings are all dialed in right, wait for patches. Like it's a much less of a convenience factor than on the console. And I feel like a lot of people discount that from the jump.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who would prefer to turn it on and they only have one thing that they have to worry about: performance, fidelity. Performance, fidelity. Whereas when I load up a PC game, I have to, am I going to use TXAA, TSAA, RXLM, or, just, I'm going to shoot out letters at people. Like, which one of those things am I going to use? And I make changes and then I look and I'm like, I don't freaking, nothing changed. I don't see anything different. Why am I picking all these different things? So like, that's really confusing to a lot of people who aren't like living and breathing this stuff all day long, which I have to admit, most of the people who watch this show, like they know what's up about PC. So for them, they're like, oh, well, that's simple, but not everybody is like that. Rich, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, even I like, I'm pretty diehard PC at this point, but even I like, I've been playing Astrobot, which we'll talk about later. And that's been refreshing, right? To just not have to worry about anything, just play.
There are no settings in that game.
There are none whatsoever. Actually, there are a few I'll talk about later, but not graphical settings. So yeah, that is refreshing. I think the thing though for me is, and this is again part of like the marketing, part of the messaging, that sort of thing, is that like there were like a number of things that differentiated consoles and PCs, right? So like, convenience is one of those, but price was one of those, right? Like, it used to be that the console manufacturers would take a hit, and it's understandable that like maybe they're not going to take as much of a hit, or they're not going to take a hit at all on pro products. But that is like that is at least jarring to people that have been used to console manufacturers taking the hit, right?
Yeah.
So
Sony's been very upfront that this gen they are not taking a hit. So that's why you've seen the PS5 go up in like every region. And they did a stealth price increase on the PS5 Slim here in America because they raised the price on the digital model from $400 to $450 for the new SKU. They just raised dual senses by $5 so they can make money on them, right? Like they're being extremely aggressive this gen about it. And you know, a big reason why the PS5 Pro is $700 is because they are not dropping the price of the PS5 Slim. They're keeping it at $500 and $450. So, you know, like in the last generation, you could get a PS4 for like $250 on Black Friday by the time the PS4 Pro came out. Like it's a big drop in price that hasn't happened.
So I have a question about the price for you guys. Do you guys think, and do you think that the reason that we're seeing this price at $700 is it because Microsoft has essentially just fallen on their face completely when it comes to Xbox, and Sony feels like I don't have any real competition right now. I can do whatever the hell I want. When Nintendo brings out a new system, people are going to buy the hell out of that new system. But that's not going to stop anybody from buying a PlayStation. But Microsoft is the one thing that like would keep them in check. So now Sony's like, we're alone at the top of the mountain. We can do whatever the hell we want. Screw you guys, double birds, $700. What do you guys 100% think?
What they're doing. Like, yeah, we know they were scared with the Series S being as cheap as it was because those documents came out that showed that they like really releasing the PS5 digital model at 400 was like a game time decision. Like that was a last second thing because of the Series S. But now here we are 4 years later and Xbox consoles are at a point where people don't even know if they're going to continue. Sony's like, yeah, I mean, like we don't have to worry about that anymore. Like if Xbox tomorrow announced a $500 Series X2, you know, or like Series X Plus, Sony would definitely not drop the price of the PS5 Pro because they're like, people are going to buy our console anyway, as has been proven by this entire generation, you know?
Yeah. I feel like this is like, you have given you've made me think of we need that competition. And if Microsoft can't do it, then God damn it, Valve, put out a freaking console right now.
Yeah, I'm fine with PC gaming growing because the more users there are to capture in that market, the more incentive there is for Sony to release their games faster on PC because it is nice. I mean, with the live service, it's cool that they do it day one, right? Like, I'd at least like the option if my PC can run a game better than a PlayStation 5 or PS5 Pro. There are like a few games, like Gran Turismo, for example. Like, if I had the choice for Gran Turismo 7 on launch day between PS5 and PC, I'm going PC because, you know, like racing is just much better on PC than it is console. Like I want Sony to be incentivized to give me that option. So if Valve releases this standalone Steam machine finally that we've been begging for 2.5 years, like that'd be great for all of us as a whole, I think.
Is now the time, Rich?
Yes, I think so. So like the Steam machine stuff is so interesting, right? Because anytime I talk about it, I don't know if it's the same on your channels, but anytime I talk about it, people are in the comments like, oh, they did that already, right? It's called Steam machines. And I'm like, yeah, they did. And like when they did that, there was so much different than there is to right now, right? Like, I think it would be a completely different story if they did that right now, where they probably would take a loss on, you know, on the actual console. Their Proton exists, right? And is pretty damn good. So I think it's a whole different world. And I think it would be really interesting to see a PS5 or PS5 Pro level console at the, if there was a PC that was like the level of the PS5 Pro, and let's say it was up to 850. Yeah, I would buy it. I don't know about anybody else, but I would buy it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But are you going to buy the PS5 Pro, Rich?
No, I don't have any plans to buy the PS5 Pro. I to be clear, I just don't play enough, right? Like, and when I'm playing, I love Astrobot, right? And I've been playing primarily Astrobot on the PS Portal, so there's just not enough like incentive for me to. I don't feel like I've really got I'm happy with my purchase, but I don't feel like I've used it enough to really like have soaked in that $500 that I initially spent. I feel like I still have more to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And like the PS5 is much stronger at the beginning of its generation than the PS4 was. Like they held back the one in the PS4 because of the recession, you know, they let that generation go a lot longer than they initially wanted it to.
For sure.
So like Whereas when the PS4 Pro came out, I was like, thank God, dude. Like these games are just running like trash on the PS4. Because like
Yeah.
I've had a PC since my freshman year of college, so like I knew what 60 FPS was, and we weren't even getting 30 on the original PS4 a lot of the time. So I was like, okay, that feels like a borderline necessary upgrade because I've cursed myself with this PC. The PS5 Pro, like I don't feel like I need it. I just want it, and I want to buy it, and I'm gonna buy it. You know, like
Yeah.
You have an excuse because you have a PlayStation focused channel, but let's pretend that you didn't have a PlayStation focused channel. Do you think you'd still pick one up?
yeah, just mainly because I play enough on the PS5. Like that feels like just a convenience and like luxury upgrade. You know, it's like it's gonna like I have a massive TV on my wall upstairs because the outlet's so high. I needed a TV that could fill the wall. So like I want the best possible thing pushing the image to that TV that isn't a PC. And PS5 Pro is going to deliver that. And that's fine enough with me. Also, PS5 Slim's Blu-ray player for movies works much better than the launch edition PS5.
Ooh.
I have no idea why, but like
Hmm.
if it's using the same disk drive as my Slim, it'll be a good 4K Blu-ray player as well.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
And you watch
Like
a lot
I've
of movies.
considered I have my PS5 upstairs and then I have my PS5 Slim down here, and I haven't done this yet out of sheer laziness, but I have considered switching them, like making my PS5 my desk console, just because the Blu-ray player sucks so bad. It like skips, it freezes, your movies will just stop playing. It has audio sync issues. I've
That
watched movies
sucks.
on the Slim. None of that happens. It's bizarre.
Oh, weird.
By the way,
Go ahead,
Bill.
Rich.
All right, I'll go. I want to address that exchange that you guys just had real quick. You said if you didn't have a PS5 Pro channel or PlayStation channel, would you still buy the PS5 Pro? And like, I feel like that happens a lot, like in the comment sections of our channels, right? Like where it's like, oh, you're just saying that because you're a Steam Deck channel, right?
Right.
But it's funny because no, I wouldn't have a Steam Deck channel if I just wasn't that interested in the Steam Deck, right?
Yeah.
Like you must have so much like I don't know, like time with PlayStation to feel like, yeah, what I want to spend time making videos on 3 times a week is PlayStation, right? Like I want to do this. So
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah, I've always like before I had YouTube, I was running a site where I was like essentially just covering the Vita just for fun, and it got kind of like it didn't get big, but I had about 600-700 people that would show up for my Vita software update breakdowns and like
Nice.
you know, if I reviewed Killzone Mercenary, that's like the only game I've ever gotten from Sony was Killzone Mercenary.
Good
And
game.
I was like so stoked. I reviewed it and everything. And I wish I could go back to then with this knowledge I have now of like resolution and frame rate. Because back then, my like focus for if a game was worth buying was like if it was fun, you know, like
I think that's a better thing.
Yeah.
That's better.
Yeah, I'm with
But
that.
like, yeah, I have my Vita. It's back there, and I just was like, I booted up Killzone Mercenary last year, just to see if it was like as good as I remembered. And I was like, I can't believe I didn't notice like all the frame drops and everything. But that was so much better back then. Like it was so much more fun.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy, you talked about you got this big ass TV, and it's got it's a fancy TV. Here in the NerdNest, I have a 43-inch shitty TV in this room. We don't even use the living room TV very much.
College girl special TV.
Yeah, it is garbage. It is a garbage TV, and I was thinking I would get the most benefit out of a PS5 Pro because I don't have to worry about 120 frames per second. The maximum that my TV can hit is 60 frames per second. And so maybe all of the games would be 60 frames per second on fidelity mode, and I would be good to go.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I'm thinking about getting it.
I'm a weird gamer. On PC I VSync everything to 60. I mostly care about consistent performance. So if I can run a game on Steam Deck at like 40 with stutters or 30 that's like a perfectly flat frame timeline, I'm taking the 30. And on PC, yeah, I can run games at like 100 plus FPS, but I don't like the variation in frame rate. So I just VSync everything to 60, try to get the frame time graph as flat as possible. And so if my PS5 Pro is going to be able to run these games at 60 FPS like it has for the most part this generation, that's worth buying to me. That's what I liked about the PS5 was playing God of War Ragnarok at like a perfect 60, or playing the, PS5 patch for Last of Us Part 2 at 60, Last of Us Part 1 at 60. Like, it was just great getting all those games, and they just like looked great, ran great, very consistently out of the box. And if I'm going to lose out on that with true next gen games on the regular PS5, that makes it just go, oh yeah, it's $700. That sucks. I've got an old iPad. I've got an old iPhone. I'll just throw that shit on Facebook Marketplace and then use that towards the PS5. I'll feel a lot better about it. Cause like, I never buy anything new unless it's like for the channel. Like the PS5 Slim, I had to buy new, and the PS5 I had to buy new. But like that TV, I drove out 2 hours to Jackson, Michigan, and put it in my dad's pickup with like blankets covering it because I didn't want to pay retail for an OLED C7. Like, I'm totally fine being cheap.
For
Well,
sure.
speaking of being cheap, do you guys think that this 700? I mean, we got the new sparkly Xbox Series X with 2 terabyte drive. That's 600, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
And then now we've got the PS5 Pro at 700. When we hit the end of this generation, do you think that they are, both Microsoft and Sony, effectively laddering us up so that when we get to the next gen, they're going to be more expensive?
I doubt it. I think they really want to just stay in that $500 price range for the mainline consoles, just because even though it doesn't seem like it when you look at the Pro, I think Sony is still like kind of burdened by that PS3 launch debacle where it was 600. I don't feel like they want to go back to there. But like, who knows? Who knows? If inflation keeps going, then yeah, maybe they will release it at $600 or $700, and then
Especially with
whole,
chips.
Yeah, we'll have this whole we'll have the same episode about how do you guys feel about the PS6 being $700? I feel like bad, but I want it.
It's bad, but I want it. Rich?
Man, I can't see it happening. At least I can't see, because I've seen some tweets that people are like 700 is going to be the new PS6 or whatever, and I cannot see that happening. I suppose I could see a $599 PS6, but that feels like it would be an incredibly tough pill to swallow. So, I mean, I'm already on the verge of not, buying a PlayStation 6 as it is. Like I said, I barely use the PlayStation 5. I enjoy my time with it, but I don't feel like I get a lot of time with it. So, yeah, 600 would probably be a little too high for me personally.
I just hope it has a disk drive. I don't see anyone talking about that. Like,
Yeah,
I think Michael Pachter, who's like wrong a lot more than he's right, but he was predicting that the he's wrong again, probably the PS7 would be when they ditch the disk drive for good. Now I'm worried because, they're releasing this as an optional attachment, which I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this either. I think it's super shitty of them to release a mid-gen option without the disk drive included, because they like sold physical games to people in this generation, and it's backwards compatible with PS4. So like, it feels super backhanded to say to your hardest core fans, who are most likely the people buying games physically, right? Because what did Capcom say, like 75% of their sales are digital now? Like, your hardest core fans are that 25% probably buying your discs, and you're saying, well, we're gonna punish you a little bit by making you order this $85 attachment. It feels like you should be catering to them because they're holding your physical disc production on their backs, and you're kind of like, well, we don't want to put $7.99 on the box, so you got to order this on Amazon. Sorry.
I think it's not just that, but I think Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, all of them, they have the data as to how many people are actually putting a disc in their drive. And if it was worth them putting it on there, I bet you that they would have. And I think that they looked at the numbers and they said, nobody's using discs.
Yeah.
Why bother?
Yeah, it just feels weird in a mid-gen, right? Like, I feel like on the PS6, that's when you can pull that lever, but like halfway through, come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. And like, on that note about like kind of just like businesses making business decisions, right? Like we see the numbers and we make a decision based on that. Like, yes, that absolutely happens, and you can sort of understand why that happens. But like, I think one of Valve's big boons, I would say, is that they cater to these niches, right? Like they look at the edge of gaming with like gyro, shoot, I'm forgetting other stuff, but like, yeah, the Steam input
The
sort of stuff,
touchpads.
the touchpads, right? Like they look at these like niches and edges of gaming and are like, nobody's catering to that. We're going to cater to that. And I feel like that adds up, and that if nothing else, it builds goodwill. And it's probably why Valve is looked at pretty much very differently than any other company, right?
Yeah.
In gaming.
Sony comes off as arrogant with this stuff. Like they're like, oh, well, they're really banking on how many people built up a digital library with the PS4 generation and now the PS5 generation. And they're like, these people will stick around. But it's like, if you want to get new people in, you're either going to have to drop the price of the regular PS5 or, you know, actually start releasing some first party games that, you know, make people want to buy a PS5.
That could
And
change
they're not
everything,
doing either
right?
of those things. Like,
that could change literally everything. I don't know where Santa Monica is. I don't know where Naughty Dog is. I don't like, they have so many studios that like have been in years of development. And I don't know, maybe we get a crest soon where all of them just release at the same time. That would be amazing. But that would change literally everything.
Well, I mean, they said we weren't getting very much this year, right? Like at the beginning of the year, they said we're done for now. It's going to be a while.
Yeah.
Well,
like
that's
I'm nervous about the first half of 2026, right? Like now's about the time when you would start to announce stuff that's coming out in the first half, or I would say Summer Game Fest would have been the time for that. But no, all we got to look
or the
forward
Game
to
Awards.
is the Game Awards. That's a little late, I think, unless you're doing like June or like May or June, I guess. But like we got Lego Horizon Adventures coming out in November.
I'm sure that somebody is very excited about that game, but it is absolutely not me. Well, speaking of games, let's talk about the games that we've been playing. Rich, you've been playing anything other than Astrobot?
Nothing other than Astrobot. I want to get back to Wukong, but I haven't. And I have 2 games that I bought that I also want to talk about, but I haven't actually played them, but just Astrobot.
So all 3 of us have been playing Astrobot.
Yeah.
So, you know, I talked about it last week a little bit. Rich talked about it last week a little bit. Jimmy, talk about what you're loving about Astrobot, because this game is a Nintendo-ass video game. It's amazing.
Yes, it is. It's the Nintendo that I like. I like that it's stage-based. I like Odyssey. I think it's a great game. But like the Mario that like got me into platformers was like stage-based platforming levels. And like they worked those little like moments in, I think, in Odyssey pretty well. Like in the little open maps, like there are platforming moments, but a lot of that game is just running around on flat ground, right? Like, so I really like Mario 3D World, and Astrobot feels a lot more like that to me, where it's like stage based, which is great.
Yeah.
Also, someone who's been around for a long time in the PlayStation ecosystem, and you know, experienced a lot of the PS1 classics on my PlayStation Vita because there were no Vita games. I'm like just constantly rewarded with like obscure characters that I really like.
Yeah, I don't know who half the characters that I've rescued are.
Yeah, Leon and Claire from Resident Evil 2. That's awesome.
That was really
Chris
good.
Redfield
Yeah.
Alucard, when you do the slot machine to get like the little add-ons for the bots, he gets a coffin to sleep in.
Oh
yeah.
no. Yeah.
Okay. The like gotcha machine. Yeah. It's just like it's cool. It's really good. Yeah, graphically it looks great. The lighting's awesome. Music is excellent. Yeah, sometimes the music verges into that like it doesn't. The music doesn't really feel like it has a set identity to it. Like, you know, like the track always matches the stage it's in, but it doesn't feel like it would cohesively come together well as a standalone album to me. Like some of the songs,
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
some of the songs just like don't feel like classic Nintendo style video game music. They feel like you could be watching an animated movie and it would work just fine. So that's like one minor criticism, I guess, but I like how tight the controls are. I like that it's like a rock solid 60. I like how quick everything loads. I am getting a little like, cause I'm 100%ing every level before I move on. The one thing that's wearing on me is that animation that you can't skip after you beat a level and all the bots fly over to the portal. It's like, that's the one thing I wish I could skip, but I mean, it's really hard to find stuff to criticize about it because it's just so much fun and doesn't have any bloat.
I will say, if you're trying to 100% and so like you're going back to a level, you can just leave the level.
That's the best.
Okay.
I was on Summon
Wait,
Sign.
You don't have to go to the end?
If you've already finished that level, you don't have to go to the end. You can just leave the level. Yeah.
They should tell you that. because I
should
tested
tell you.
it and I was like, oh, I hope this works, because I
Yeah,
found a
yeah,
second puzzle piece and it worked. I was like, oh, cool. But
Yeah.
I told the guys on a summon sign about that on Monday. I was like, and they were like, wow, that's crazy.
That's
They
awesome.
got to tell people about it. I did have a funny moment where I did this thing where I put out my PSN name and told everyone on PS Ready to add me. So I'm officially at the cap of PlayStation friends, which is hilarious because my console like broke down trying to accept all those people. This one guy, I felt so bad because he messaged me and asked if there are accessibility options for being blind. And I text messaged him back and I was like, how's he gonna read it? How's he gonna fucking read the text?
No,
But then-
I'm sure he has
but
a
then-
I'm
screen
sure he's got a
reader.
reader.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, there's a screen reader. So I felt bad because then he voice messaged me back. He's like, don't worry about it, bro. There's a screen reader. I was like, okay. But yeah, that game does not have. I discovered this for him. It does not have like action to text
No,
accessibility. It just has make things bigger mode.
that's
From what I could
unfortunate.
tell.
Yeah. So speaking, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say, because Jimmy, you brought up the music, like that song in the first level where somebody goes, "What's your name again?" and then they sing Astrobot, and that like that is it in my head, and it
Yes.
has been in my head for like a week straight. Like, what's your name again, or what'd you say your name was? Astrobot. It's just so catchy. I also love how everything is constantly in motion.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that really impressed me was just like the physics of all of the, like, you pull a thing and 4,000 acorns fall out of a box, and they're
so
all,
good.
and you're moving around them, and they're just, you're kicking them all over the place. You hold down the square button and then do Astrobot's little spin move. And as he's doing that spin move, the pieces are flying all over the place, or when you're running across glass and it's breaking under your feet.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's amazing what they've done with this game. It's so damn good.
They're
Rich,
like,
what were you going to
Starfield's
say?
got all the potatoes. We got all the acorns. Look
Yeah,
at all our
exactly.
acorns.
Exactly. Yeah, and the best is like, you know, it's just like a sandbox. Like you're just in a ball pit and you're just having fun with it, like you're describing, Bill. And then you're like, you come back to the level and you're like, oh, I missed a piece, and you discover like, oh, I it was in there. It was somewhere in there. I found a secret like as I was spinning around for the acorns, and now I got to pull this thing that does this other thing. And I don't know, it's just fun to like. They have all these little things hidden in different little places, and I love
You're
that.
constantly rewarded for doing things that you don't have to do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of people kind of were litigating whether or not this could be a PC game. And I just want to say a couple things. I've been playing on the PlayStation Portal primarily. Like the only
Cool.
time I'm not playing on the PlayStation Portal is like those like button levels, like the triangle levels, the circle levels, because I just need,
You
I
need
need
that-
actual,
Can't use that latency.
I cannot do
You
it
need
with
that
the
direct
latency.
input.
Exactly. For those levels, I need, you know the meme where you like sit forward. I need that. Yeah.
Sit forward.
Yes. So I've been using PlayStation Portal, and you know, like the vibration and like the haptics, they can get pretty loud. And so my wife was like commenting on it when I was playing in bed. So I turned everything off. I turned the vibration off. I turned the haptics off. I turned the the light bar off, and everything. Oh, and I mapped the gyro to just the left stick. Like there's a setting
Cool.
that's just like you can just map it to the left stick.
I'm gonna do that. That got old really quick.
Yeah, it gets old.
I
really quick.
disagree. I love it.
I was
But
like, oh, okay, again.
But my point is, I'm playing without basically any of the DualSense features at this point. Like I still enjoy those DualSense features, and I'll turn them back on during the daytime and stuff like that. But like if you want to play this on PC and it eventually gets ported to PC, I can easily see the path forward where it's just like, yeah, just turn that stuff off, no big deal.
It would be a good Steam Deck game for sure. I hope they
Absolutely.
release it. I'd play it again on that and just 100% it. Like I buy Super Mario World on everything.
Exactly like that. Yeah.
And like I can see somebody saying, well, you know, if they put it on PC, like I don't look at Astrobot. It's an amazing game. I don't see people going out and buying a PS5 for Astrobot.
No.
As good as it is, and it is amazing. Everybody should play it. It's so damn good. But that's not the reason you get a PS5. So I do think that it's in their best interest to port this to PC, just so that they can, you know, make some more money on it.
Yeah. I like that it uses the DualSense speaker. I feel like that's an underutilized feature of PlayStation controllers.
Yeah, agreed. I will say
most of the time I'm listening to a podcast while I'm playing it, so I don't hear what the speaker's usually doing. So I usually missed out on that.
Heathen listening to podcasts. You mean like the NerdNest?
Not this one.
So like last week, Bill, you were talking about like the different like mechanics in the game and like how sometimes they'll just like pick up a mechanic in for one level and then like drop it all together and you won't see it again maybe for a while or at all. So they have so many of those, but I'm just going to pick one of my favorite because what I really like is that I'm not a big like lore person, narrative person, but man, they do such a good job of taking the like mechanic and meshing it well with like the theme. So like the level where you get big, where you can get big
because like the sponge.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that.
I've never seen anything like that where like, yeah, you get big, but you get big because you get filled with water and you're a sponge and then you can fill other things with water. And it's just like, it blows my mind.
That level, I had found all of the dudes and all of the puzzle pieces. Yeah. And then after I finished it, I went back in and played that level again because I loved the, like, you go into the hot bath and you soak up all the water and then you can do stuff. It's just so fun.
Yeah.
I played the God of War level like 3 times.
Oh my God. So you got all the green ravens then?
Yeah. I had to. I just played it for fun though, because this generation, Ragnarok has been my favorite Sony game. That's the one I'm going to double dip on for PC. I wasn't going to get Ghost of Tsushima, but then my friend bought it for me for my birthday, so I was like, oh, I'll test out the new launcher login thing. Yeah, I'll use that for a video. But then I've been itching to replay God of War Ragnarok, and I'm just excited for that game again to be new.
Couple more days, right? The 18th maybe?
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to get Dead Rising early, so I was kind of like, oh shit, am I going to play Dead Rising? I'm going to play God of War, but I'm already done with Dead Rising, so I'm ready to go for God of War.
Sweet.
Very cool. Jimmy, what have you been playing other than Astrobot?
Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, which I can't talk about, but that was my most anticipated game of the year, and I was very excited to get it. So when I can talk about it, you'll see me talk about it.
Heck yeah.
And then I played the original Dead Rising on the Steam Deck just to refresh myself with it. And that game holds up. I can't believe it holds up as well as it does because it's a Xbox 360 launch title, but it's a perfect Steam Deck game because you can just like kind of, you can mess around, kill some zombies, go farm the chainsaws from the clown boss, or you can just play through the rest of the story. I've been playing a ton of Space Marine 2. I was having issues with it because my PS5's Wi-Fi card is just a mess. Like I have a gigabit setup and I'll be in the room, I'll do a speed test on my phone or my laptop and it'll be like 600 down, 400 up. I'm like, great. Then I do it on the PS5 and it's like 68 down and I'm like, what's going on here? So I got an Orbi Netgear setup. I turned off the Netgear armor and it's still not getting good speeds. Like it's getting 200 down, which is much better than what I was getting, but I'm having a lot more consistency with it, so I've finally been able to dig into Space Marines multiplayer, and it's just so good. It's so addicting. I love it so much. And it got me into painting the Warhammer miniatures, which is great. So I've been doing that a lot instead of sinking hours into games. But yeah, and then Astrobot.
That's awesome.
Very cool. I definitely want to play Space Marine, but right now I just have too much other stuff to play. So that's one of those games that's just going to go on my wish list. And I will end up picking it up later.
It's worth it for the campaign. Like the campaign is 10 hours, but it's like all killer, no perfect. Filler. Yeah, there's no bloat, there's no padding. It's just like level. Story crescendos really well. Has a great ending. I played the original Space Marine, but I played it a long time ago, so I wasn't like totally, refreshed on a lot of the characters that would show up. And I got everything that was going on. And it's like, it's so nice to have a Warhammer game that is a complete product at launch, which is a very low bar that they have never managed to clear since the original Space Marine. And also, it's content complete, which is great. And it runs good. And it looks amazing. And it feels AAA. It's like, finally, the Warhammer game I feel like people have been waiting for forever just dropped. It's like, it's very nice. And that's Saber awesome. Is cool. I like Saber a lot because they've been living in that AA range for so long. And like, this is their first big step into AAA. And I think they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and this game seems like it was such a good fit for this engine, right? Yeah. With like the hordes and stuff. Man, it looks so good when I haven't played it yet, but I just seen the like videos of it. It just looks so like like a movie, right? Like seeing the
Yeah.
hordes of
Mhm.
enemies coming down.
It makes me way more excited for the Jurassic Park game because it's the same creative director.
Oh,
And like I was like, is that going to be more double A or is it going to be triple A? I think that's probably going to be a triple A title for them. And then it makes me very excited for John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, which like if you're a Saber fan, you immediately know what that game's going to be. It's going to be World War Z mixed with Snow Runner or Mud Runner, and I'm very excited for that game.
that sounds insane. I
That
didn't know
sounds
this
a
was a
Jimmy.
game.
That's a Jimmy game right there.
Yeah.
Jimmy game for sure.
Like a Left 4 Dead campaign where you're driving a car from like point to point and then the car breaks down and you have to fend off like a million zombies. It just sounds like
That
why
sounds
hasn't
great.
anyone done this yet? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that's what they're doing, but just going off of how much they used World War Z tech and like the zombie hordes and everything in Space Marine 2, just watching the trailer, what happens in it, it's like I think it's a safe bet to say that that's what they're doing. And I know a guy, Nick Chester, he works there, and I kind of like pushed him a little bit of it on it at Summer Game Fest, and he was like, "I'm not going to talk about it," but he like definitely cracked a smile when I brought up what I thought the game was going to be. So I feel pretty good about my prediction.
That's funny.
That's awesome. So I've been playing Visions of Mana. It's a JRPG, and I got a review code for it, and I'm still fairly early on. I was playing it on my ROG Li-X, which I have Bazite on that, and it runs fine on there. But the text is really, really small, and not only is the text really small, but it's like white letters with a black border around the outside, and the black border is making the white part very thin, and like just
Oh.
looking at a 7-inch screen, it's too hard to actually read it. So I ended
It
up
sucks.
so I ended up using GeForce Now, because I have like the Super Pod, like the highest tier of GeForce Now.
Cool.
But I ended up using GeForce Now. I'm playing that on my MacBook, and that was absolutely fine. So I was able to run it on there just fine. It's great. The combat is really good. So you come up to a bunch of enemies and they start attacking you, and basically like a ring gets drawn around you where you're like, there's the little battle area where you're fighting those dudes. And it's got very simple, like, you can press X 4 times or you can press Y.
Oh, so it's
But
an
then-
ARPG. It's not a
Yeah, it's an
Okay.
action game. Yeah, it's an action RPG. And as you're fighting these things, you also have like abilities. Like you can get like items that you can slot into certain parts of your equipment loadout so that you can like do fireballs and stuff like that. And when you want to fire those things off, you can use the D-pad, and basically you press the D-pad, a ring pops up, the combat stops and freezes. So then you can say, oh, I'm going to shoot this, or I'm going to use this ability instead. But if you want, you can take all of those different abilities that you have on your ring loadout, and you can turn those into quick commands that are based on, pulling the right bumper and then pressing Y in order to do that. So you don't have to slow down combat unless you want to. I love that they give you both options. The draw distance is really, really far, which I like a lot, because it's not, I wouldn't say open world, but you go into a section of the world and it's huge and you can see really far. And they made
That's
like
cool.
yeah, it is. And they made the
I was just looking it up.
collectibles.
It looks awesome.
I'm going to get to the bad parts in a second.
Okay.
They made the collectibles huge so you can see them from really far away. And so you go into an area and your quest marker is over there, but you're like, oh, I'm going to go over and collect all of this stuff first. That's great. I like it. Now, the part that I can't stand, the voice acting is, I don't want to drag the voice actors, but it's really irritating to listen to them talk.
So it's poorly directed. You can drag the voice acting
Yes.
director.
There you have it. Yes. I cannot stand listening to it. And it's non-stop, just wandering around. Like my characters, like the people in your party are like talking back and forth about, oh, I wonder what the wind's like in this area. Maybe we should go over here and do that. And just like, I just want you to shut up. And you can turn it off, which I did, because I was like, I'll just read stuff. But then if I'm playing it on a handheld, I can't read it because it's too damn small. So like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So if you like that kind of game and you're okay with really annoying voice acting, then Visions of Mana might be for you. Runs great on GeForce Now, runs great on handhelds.
Cool.
But I don't know how much more time I'm going to put into it because it's just a little too irritating to me.
That reminds me of the greatest mod ever for Horizon Forbidden West. Have you guys played that game?
No.
Horizon
Okay.
Forbidden West. That's the second one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
No, I
no.
haven't played the
Aloy
second one.
never shuts the fuck up in this game when you're doing it. To be like, oh, there's a collectible over there. Oh, I can like use this move on this boss. Like, oh, I can climb that. And it's like, I played a video game before, and there's no way to turn them off in the menu. So there's a mod that just removes all of that ancillary dialogue, like outside of cutscenes and conversation points where Aloy's like telling you how to play the game 40 hours in. And it's like,
Is that
that's-
like Atreus in God of War?
it's like that, but if Kratos did it, and about 300% more than Atreus does it. It's like, it's egregious how much she talks when you're just playing the game. And I
That's
like
awesome.
Aloy. I think the voice actor is great, but it's like,
Yeah.
I don't need to be told how to play a video game. I'm 31 years old.
Not
I wonder what
necessary.
that yellow paint is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the games that we've been playing. Let us know what games you've been playing in the comment section down below that like button. Let's move on to other news. The entire Annapurna interactive team resigned after a dispute. It says here from InsiderGaming.com, in a report published by Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, it has been confirmed that the leadership team at Annapurna Interactive, a game publishing unit, led an exodus that saw 25 employees resign. Per the report, it was explained that negotiation to break Annapurna Interactive away from the parent company fell flat, after which Nathan Gary, the firm's president, stepped down. I mean, well, first off, this does not affect what they're doing with Control or Alan Wake, apparently, although I don't really understand why not. But I guess that somebody else is working on that. But the whole team just said, screw you guys, I'm going home. Rich, what do you think about this?
Yeah. So on the subject of it not affecting Control, so there are a couple things there, right? Like they've said, or not they, but developers that have signed to Annapurna for publishing deals have also said that their games are not affected, especially ones that are kind of on the verge of being released. And I mean, like, even if they were affected, I certainly wouldn't say that they were, right? The point is I'm on the verge of releasing my game, and I don't want people to lose faith in it.
Yeah.
For Control, I mean, that's a bigger game anyway. So and it's a while out, so I'm sure it's actually not impacted. As far as like what I think about this is like one of three weird recent stories about small indie publishing houses. So like there was Humble Games, where Humble completely got rid of Humble Games, the publishing arm of Humble, and the only thing they published were like, little indie games. There's this, which is them trying to spin out into their own like subsidiary of Annapurna. And the fact that they're all breaking away, I think it's cool that there's that solidarity, and I hope that means that they form their own studio or their own publishing house, and I would very much look forward to whatever that is. So I'm looking forward to that, hopefully. And then the third story, which just happened, is that Mint Rocket, the developer behind Dave the Diver. So Mint Rocket was like just a studio at Nexon. Nexon is like a big publisher, like AAA, everything, right? But they're based in the East. And so Mint Rocket was able to spin off into their own subsidiary. So it's like these three different like events where one was shut down completely, the other one they left because they weren't able to do their own subsidiary, and then one was able to do their own subsidiary. So I don't know, all of this feels to me like they're like just bigger companies are trying to lower their investment in these sort of strategies, and in general lower their investments in gaming, it feels like, in general at this point. So that's a little bit scary, but like I said, I do hope that they're able to kind of form their own publishing house, and I would certainly look forward to whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like the Oscar bait publisher for me. So like, I loved Edith Finch. I was just looking up what games they put out. I didn't play Stray. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really affect me as a gamer, you know, but it is weird. It's weird to have a studio just be like, see ya.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right, right? Like they were very art housey with
Yeah.
what they picked. Like it wasn't just like pixel art or like super low poly. But there are a couple of these games that are like some of my favorite games. So
Like
Neon
Neon
White.
White. Yeah, I was
Oh
like,
my
that's
God.
some rich game right there.
I fucking love Neon White. Sorry
That's
for
a good
my
game.
language, but that's how much I love it. Neon White is so good. And Outer Wilds, they published
Yeah.
that as well. I love Outer Wilds. So they're very like art housey, but I love them for it, right? Like I think they do a good
Mhm.
job of picking out like unique games, things that would stand out in a trailer reel, or things that would stand out just as you're looking over kind of stuff coming to Steam. So yeah, with them sort of not, them dissolving at this point, I don't know I'm sure that Annapurna will find people to sit in those seats, but I'm not sure that it will be what it was before.
Do you think it was like a situation where they felt like they were subsidizing the movie and TV side of the company a little bit? Like, you know, like they were making the money with the games that they were hand selecting and, you know, they sold pretty well. And then the movie and TV side might be making some like not great moves and their movies aren't performing. And then they're
That
taking
could-
the money from the game side to fund movie stuff, you know, like,
Yeah, that could be. It's hard to like get an idea of like how much these sort of games make money or not make money. Like I know I was a big proponent of Neon White. I was a big proponent of Outer Wilds, but I have no idea how those games sold. So it feels like could go either way, where like they're not making enough money on the gaming side, or they're not making enough money on the film side or TV side. Yeah, it's tough to say.
But they had to have made money on like Stray because it like won all kinds of awards. Not last year, but
yeah. And it was on
2
PS
years ago.
Plus, day one.
I think that so maybe they didn't make money because it was on PS
Well,
Plus.
maybe they got a big payout because it was on Extra. It wasn't like a free
okay.
PS Plus game. It was just on Extra on launch.
Gotcha. Well, you know what's probably not going to be on PS Plus at launch is I love the headline for this story. Skateboard Man Tony Hawk teases that he is working with Activision again. He says, "I wish I could tell you more, but I can tell you I've been talking to Activision again, which is insanely exciting. We're working on something. This is the first time I've said that publicly. I think it will be something that fans truly appreciate." So here's my question to you guys. Do you think we're going to get a new Tony Hawk Pro Skater game, or do you think they're just Lego Tony Hawk Pro Skater or some nonsense like that? You know what I mean?
Do
you think it's
need
real?
To do 3 and 4.
Yeah.
One
Right.
and 2 is good, but 3 and
Yeah.
4 are better games. So
Yeah.
I'd prefer them remaster those.
Or does a 5 come out? Is what I'm saying.
Well, 5 came out and it was horrible. So it'd be 6.
Then.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
5 was that weird cell shaded one they made in like 6 months or something.
Oh goodness. Yeah, there's so many ways it could go because this is just like the vaguest thing I've ever seen. But at the same time, like if it were like Activision saying this, I would like my eyes would be rolling so hard because like again, this is just super vague and it's a whole bunch of nothing. But it's Tony Hawk saying it. And if Tony Hawk is saying it, I'm getting excited. Like he's like, you guys will be happy with this. I'm like, great, whatever it is, I believe you. I believe you, Tony Hawk. I will be happy with this.
That's 3 good things with Activision in a row because they did that special patch for the Steam version of the remaster where they took out the online.
Oh, right. I
requirement.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
They're doing
yeah.
something with Tony Hawk, and for Halloween and Call of Duty, they have the best Michael Myers skin I've ever seen in a game. Art the Clown looks excellent, and then they're doing Sam from Trick or Treat and including a bunch of the masks from the kids in the bus, and Sam looks great. There's like
sick.
a legitimate horror fan working at Activision, like slaving away on this stuff, and I appreciate that guy.
That's awesome. I hope he watches your channel. So like they do, by the way, they do address, or Tony does address like the 3 and 4 situation where like obviously like I forget who it was. Relic Entertainment. Relic is the Space Marine
Vicarious
folks, right?
Visions, right?
Vicarious Visions, yeah. Like they were working on 3 and 4, and like they got let go or whatever, and then so like Activision was trying to find someone else to do 3 and 4, and like they just couldn't find anyone that they trusted as much as Vicarious Visions,
Right.
which I don't know then why you would have shut that studio down or whatever
They
happened.
absorbed them into Blizzard, remember?
And did they just make more
I think it
Overwatch
was-
stuff?
I think it was for the. This might be wrong. Don't kill me. The Warcraft 3 fix, like the remaster they did when that came out, it was abysmal. I think it was like something like that. They had, and then Diablo 2 Resurrected, maybe.
Got it.
Is what they had them working on.
Yeah, they should have left them on some Tony Hawk stuff, man.
Yeah. That sold really well. It was on Switch. I remember it selling pretty well on Switch, and I bought it on the Epic Game Store. That's how much I wanted to play it.
Me too. That's one of the like 4 or 5 games I own on Epic Game Store is Tony Hawk's, and then I bought it again on Steam. So like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like it had some legs on it, and it sold well from the outset. So like, yeah, hopefully they are doing something exciting. Like I said, if it was just Activision saying this and it was their PR, I would just be rolling my eyes. But because it's Tony Hawk, I have some actual like faith that this will deliver whatever it is.
Yeah, it feels like he has a good barometer for a quality Tony Hawk game now after Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. I don't think he'll ever let that happen again because that was horrible.
Yeah.
See, I've never been like a skateboarding game guy. I remember playing Skate where the camera was right down at the board. I loved that. I thought that was really cool. I never played Tony Hawk, but I was always somebody who really liked SSX Tricky.
Oh,
like,
Tricky was awesome.
Those were the games that I really liked was the snowboarding games instead of the skateboarding games. Just because there's none of that where you got to push the button to build speed. You're just going down a damn hill. That just seemed more fun to me. It felt faster and more frenetic. So
they made a Tony Hawk game like that called Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam.
I did not know about that.
In the DS.
And there was like an accessory, right? Like a peripheral for that game.
That was Tony Hawk's Ride.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Tony Hawk
board.
Yeah. My man knows all the Tony Hawk.
It was like with the Wiimote, you tilted left and right. It was cool. It was like cartoony. It was a good DS game. And then, there was the offshoot of American Wasteland for DS called American Skateland. That was pretty cool.
I had no idea I was going to get a history lesson in Tony Hawk skateboard games.
I love it.
I want them to remaster American Wasteland. That was the best. That and the 2 Underground games are like what I really want.
I was gonna say the Thug games, right? Like those were like I didn't play them. Like once you could get off your skateboard, I was like, oh wait, I don't know what to do now. Like I
can some of the worst platforming you could ever conceive, but like the stories are really good, especially in the first Underground. Like one of my favorite bands, they're from Michigan. They're called Hot Mulligan. The enemy character in Underground 1 is Eric Sparrow, and their new track is End Eric Sparrow. It's so funny. It's like the gravestone with Eric Sparrow's name on it because he's such a bastard. Like, so yeah, it'd be cool to bring back Underground 1. That was a cool little open area game.
That's dope.
Very cool. So Game Pass just had its big change. It is now Xbox has the standard tier, which has gotten rid of the Xbox console or Game Pass console tier. And now it no longer has the first party stuff. You got to go to the more expensive tier after that. A while ago, I canceled my PS Plus because I wasn't playing any of those games.
Yeah.
And I held on to Game Pass, but just like I'm not really playing those games either. And I think I might be canceling Game Pass as well, just because, I mean, probably not until after Indiana Jones comes out because I want to play Indiana Jones. But like, Jimmy, are you subscribed to Game Pass still?
Well, when I worked for Austin Evans, the Xbox would send everyone at the studio like yearly gift, and no one had an Xbox. So I stacked up like at least a decade of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate when I was working for him, but I don't use it. I don't like subscription services. I don't like them on the movie side either. I buy everything on Apple TV because you get the good 4K streaming. I don't like the disposable nature of it, and I don't like the way it makes me think about like content, whether it's a movie, TV show, or video game. I'd rather just like put down the money to buy something because that incentivizes me to stick with it and watch it. And I've talked to a lot of developers at events who are like, yeah, our game's coming to Game Pass, but it really helps us more if you buy it on Steam because they use the Game Pass money to fund development. You know, like it's not like they get it when the game comes out. They get it when they're in development on the game. So like they still need to make money. And I don't like the way that people just like have got this new phrase they use on Twitter where they're like, I'll wait for Game Pass. And then it's like if it doesn't come to Game Pass, they'll never buy it. So it's like I'm not a hater, but I'm like a cautious not supporter of it. I have PS Plus though because I play a lot of online games. But I add the games to my account every month. I got to be real. I've never really played a PS Plus game because if I want to buy a PlayStation game, I just buy the game. You know, like by the time.
How much is the cheapest tier? Like that just gets you
80 a
online.
year? Stupid.
How much?
80 a year. It's so bad.
Ouch. Yeah.
And then I think it's 120 for extra. I think it's like 150 almost. It's either 137 or 147 for premium, which premium is just a terrible value in like every way. I am a hater of PS Plus Premium.
Yeah.
Rich,
Yeah,
are you
but-
subscribing?
No, I haven't. So I've subscribed like once or twice. Quick anecdote on why I won't subscribe again. Even like my free stuff, I like, you know, like with the handheld, you get the free subscriptions and like for 3 months to Game Pass. I haven't been activating those, and I probably have like 4 of them. So I probably have like a full year of Game Pass that I could redeem. But the quick anecdote is this: my son recently wanted to play. Crap, I forgot the game. So it's like this RPG that plays like Earthbound. It's like a 2D RPG. Eichenfeld, that's the name.
Oh yeah.
Ikenfell. Eichenfeld. So he wanted to play this game Eichenfeld because he remembers playing it a couple years ago, and he wanted to pick up that save because he never finished the game. And so turns out when he played it on Game Pass. It's no longer on Game Pass. So when I activated one of these 3-month subscriptions, it wasn't there. And that's on me. I could have checked it before I did the activation. That part's on me. But because it's like Microsoft and whatever Windows, I don't know how to get that save back. Like it's the same computer. So like I didn't delete the save. So I should be able to get the save, but I don't know how to get it back.
Deletes your cloud saves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, I don't know if this is the case for Eichenfeld, to be fair, but sometimes those saves are like different formats and encrypted such that you can't just use that same save in a Steam version, right?
I mean, like, yeah, trying to add them to Steam is like a ridiculous process too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do that all the time, right? Like I'll pick up a game and I won't play it for a couple years and then I'll pick it up again later on. This is just how I play games. So just Game Pass does not work for me personally. And I end up spending money and not making use of it. Whereas if I just buy the game, I feel like I make more use of that because I'll play the game.
The worst thing about PS Plus is that they lock cloud saves behind it. I'm like, that sucks. That's
That
the
really
worst.
sucks. Yeah.
Like, does Xbox cloud saves, are those locked behind the paywall?
I don't know.
Because I like Steam cloud saves for the win.
Free.
Like they do it amazingly well. It's on the developers to decide whether or not they want to use it, but almost every game that I play uses Steam cloud saves. Although it is irritating when you go to play a game, and it happened this morning. I sat down, I was going to play more Castlevania, and
It was still running.
It was still running someplace, and it was like, because I got too many friggin' devices, and it was like, hey, you can't play this or you're going to delete your save. And I was like, shoot, I don't know what to do now. So then I had to go find what device I had played it on. This is a content creator problem because we have so many different devices, but I had to find which one it was. And it turned out it was my Steam Deck, and I turned that on and it was sitting at 2% battery life. And I was like, boosh! So I had to run over and plug it in because I didn't want to lose where I was in the game. But cloud saves should just, like, they're not expensive.
Yeah.
Like that is just, it's not an expensive cost. They should never be behind a paywall.
Sony is so good at coming up with stuff. Sorry, Rich. Sony's just good at coming up with stuff on the fly. And I feel like if they just thought about things before they did them a little bit more, they wouldn't have so many controversies. Because like the whole 3-tiered system is like, some executive at Sony being like, oh shoot, we got to compete with Game Pass, throw something together really quick. And they're like, okay, make it 3 tiers. And then when they get to PS Plus Premium, they're like, I don't know what we're going to include in this. I guess we'll put the PS3 streaming in that's terrible.
Which
and
is awful.
Some classics, which run on a terrible emulator. And Oh, that's about it. Like, call it a day.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, you know, there is some cost associated to it, right? That part I understand. And if you want to charge me that specific cost, which, you know, just knowing, being a software developer, I know what like storage costs in the cloud, and you know, my game saves is probably like maybe $10 a year. If you want to charge me $10 a year to do cloud saves, I'll go for it. I'll pay that $10 gladly. But don't make it that I have to pay the $80 for the online play that I'm not going to use so that I can just get the cloud saves.
Yeah.
Yeah, the online stuff, like I have been consistently, ever since having an Xbox or a PlayStation, I've consistently paid to play online. And I almost, with few exception, I almost always just play single player games on those systems. So I'm just throwing my money away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I play a lot of multiplayer games on PS5 because so many of them have cross save now, like Diablo. I play on both PC and PS5. Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2's cross save is insane because you have to log into the like pros website, which is Focus Home Interactive's system, and then you have to manually bounce the save back and forth. So every time I'm done on my PlayStation, I have to like go on this website and click transfer to PC. And it works, but like it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
That's weird. Just have it automatically send it at the end of your session.
Right. Like every other game.
Correct.
So I had a moment where like I realized I didn't transfer from my PC and I was in the middle of a match and I was like,
ouch.
All right, I'm quitting. I'm transferring it over.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
So deals, the Steam Deck currently on sale for, and I got to click on this because I closed it and didn't. You can get one for Jesus, $296 for a 64 gigabyte LCD Steam Deck. $296.
That's so worth it.
Yeah. If anybody's on the fence about picking up like a Steam Deck, $296 is so low when you compared like to anything else that you can buy out there. Just that value proposition is crazy. And you know, a 64 gigabyte drive in that, you can, like the 2230 drives, ever since the Steam Deck came out, the 2230 drives have just kept coming down in price over and over and over because suddenly somebody has something that they're used for. So like they just keep getting cheaper. Or you can spend $336. So for another $40, you can get the 512 one, which honestly, that's probably the one that I would recommend because then you don't have to crack it open and see it. But if you guys were like looking at all these prices for things that are on these two prices, which one would you recommend, Jimmy?
64 gig, get an SSD, learn your hardware. I don't know. I'm cheap.
It's a pretty easy. It is
easy.
probably
Like, I did
the
it.
easiest. Yeah.
I've done it twice.
Yeah.
Cool thing is that I noticed is if you send in your Steam Deck for RMA, you can take like, and you have an extra 2230, you can pop that in the one you're sending in for RMA, and then when you get it back, you can take your original drive and just put it in the new deck, and it'll just work, which is cool. Like you don't have to reformat or anything; it just works with the data that's on the drive.
Yeah, that's
right.
awesome.
So you don't have to worry about your stuff coming back and you've lost everything.
And you gotta re-download everything. You know,
right. Although that's not a big deal on the Steam Deck because like everything's on the cloud, everything's there. You just hit download and you're all
just
set.
saving time.
Yeah,
it's
just
cool.
Like when my son broke his Nintendo Switch a few years ago.
How did he break a Switch? Those things are like built like tanks.
They are.
I disagree. Those things are fragile.
Did he just drop it?
I don't even know. It was broken, and we found out that it was broken. And I called up Nintendo, and they said send it in, and we sent it in, and then they sent it back, and there was game backups for every game except for Animal Crossing.
No.
Animal Crossing is the game that you definitely don't want to lose your save game data.
and
it was
Animal Crossing and Pokemon. Those are the two.
Right.
The problem with Animal Crossing is that it's literally tied to the hardware. I don't know why they did that, but it's
because they're idiots.
So if they send you a different piece of hardware, or probably like they replaced the CPU or something, it's just lost forever because it was tied to that specific hardware. And yes, that was an idiotic move. Oh,
I feel like it's too late to tell you, but there is a way to recover it from the cloud. I've done it.
really?
You
Well,
can
this
call
was
Nintendo and they'll give you a like wait, it's like a QR code or something. I forget exactly because it was a couple years ago, but they give you a way to re-download the save
I didn't know this.
from the
That's
cloud. Like
amazing.
and they mark it down. You have to call them and talk to a human on the phone,
Yeah.
and then they'll do it and it'll download it, and then they mark that you did that because they give you like one. They're like, don't do it again.
They're
Don't-
jerks.
When it
Don't-
happened when I got the OLED, and I was like, oh, no, and I had sold my original Switch, and I was like, no, my Animal Crossing save.
Well, I'm glad they hooked you up at least.
Yeah,
But,
Yeah, that's
on,
nice.
on the Steam Deck, I just looked this up. If you sell a 64 gigabyte Steam Deck, it looks like you can sell it for about $270 on eBay. My point being, like, to your point, right, Bill? Like, if you just want to try it, like, it'll cost you like 20 to 30 bucks, assuming you don't just return it, right? Like, if you just try it for 6
Yeah.
months and you're like, oh, you know what, this isn't for me. Like, it's gonna cost you maybe 50 bucks with shipping and everything. Like, yeah, it seems like a no-brainer at this point. If you're curious, why not try the $300 model? If you stick with it, you can replace the SSD. If you don't stick, if you are still just not sure you want to open it up, you can even have an SD card. Like, there's so much there.
Absolutely. Moving on to upcoming games. This week we've got Final Fantasy 16 coming out on September 17, The Plucky Squire, which is
Heck yeah.
I'm excited about that one. That's coming out on the 17th, although that's included in PS Plus this month.
Yeah. Devolver
so-
and PlayStation have always had a good setup like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's also on Game Pass or whatever, but that's coming to all platforms. And Otria, the last song, I don't know anything about that game. The game
Never heard of
Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, which Jimmy can't talk about until next time. God of War Ragnarok and Frostpunk 2. Any of these games that you guys want to talk about before we move on?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to like half that list, right? So like Final Fantasy 16, yeah, it doesn't look like it plays very well on handhelds, but I'm happy to play that on desktop. There is a patch that recently got released on that demo, and it performs considerably better than it
Yeah.
did. It's still not something like I would recommend necessarily, but it performs a lot better, and I would call it playable now on handhelds. So something to look
Yeah.
into.
Is there any?
Pl-
Do you know if there's any icon fights in that demo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It
it
Okay.
starts with one.
yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
where you got to test it because
Yeah.
that's where it tanks on PS5.
Yeah, and to be clear, still rough. But here's the thing, right? Like I looked on Steam Deck's top played games. Number one is Black Myth Wukong, and Black Myth Wukong is a lot better than it was when it launched as well. But it's still not something that I'd be like, oh yeah, you should run to play that on the Steam Deck. And number 21 is Space Marine 2, which not at all would I say is that something you should be playing on a Steam Deck. But like it's the number 21 most played game on Steam Deck right now. So like people will play it.
I think that people, like a lot of the hardcore gamers out there, they're always focused on got to get this resolution, got to get this frame rate. And the vast majority of people that are playing games are like, this is the hardware that I have. I want to play this game.
That's it.
I'm going to have to deal with 20 frames per second. And
That's
there's nothing, and a lot of people don't even notice that it's 20 frames per second. They're just
I
like,
know.
oh, I was playing a game.
It's crazy. It's crazy now, but like I was playing Killzone Mercenary just a few years
That's
ago.
right. That's right. Yeah, you don't notice it until you do. There was definitely points in my life where I didn't notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played Space Marine mostly at like 50 FPS on my PC when I had it, and I was fine with it. I was like, I don't care. And then once I realized it was running that low, I dropped it to 40, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I played the Zelda, the Game Boy game that was remade on the Switch.
Link's Awakening.
Yeah, Link's Awakening. Thank you. I played that on the Switch, and just like you said, the frame rate is all over the place, and there's definitely times where it drops way down low, and at no point did it bother me.
Yeah, no, I beat that whole game. I remember.
Yeah.
I wish they just capped it or like gave you an option. The performance and fidelity modes, like
Yeah.
I want that 30 because it could run at 30. It never dropped that low.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, the last thing that I want to talk about today is we got an email that came in from, I think you were going to say Basil is the person's name. They said, I just wanted to say that I'm a big fan and thank you so much for making my daily commute less cumbersome with the podcast episodes. Anyway, I wanted to share something so you and the crew could get in the ring and fight it over for us to watchers and listeners to enjoy. The pictures in the bottom of this email. Also, one small rule / edge case I thought is that you can only combine genres on the same side. So, for example, you can't enjoy action adventure games if you only pick the left side. So, for the audio listeners, we've got one of those, the red pill and the blue pill choice from the Matrix. And on the left-hand side, we've got RPG games, action games, and puzzle games. And on the right-hand side, we've got first-person shooter, adventure, and platformer. And they're basically saying, well, we got to pick one. You can't have both. So which one are you going to go with? I am going to start with Rich. Rich, what do you think? Which side are you picking, left or right?
This is surprisingly easy for me because my top two genres are both on the right side. So FPS and platformer for me are like my all-timers. I can spend all day with like Super Meat Boy and Doom, like not a problem. If those were the last two games I had left on Earth, I'd still have a ton of fun. So easily FPS, adventure, and platformer for me.
Yeah. I was going to say FPS because I was like, oh, Resident Evil 7's an FPS. But all the best Resident Evils are third person, so I'll go action.
That's good.
So you're on your RPG action puzzle on the left-hand side.
Yeah. Because I like a few RPGs, but yeah. Whichever one has Resident Evil in it. That's
I
my
respect
go-to.
that. Yeah.
That's fair.
I'd give up like every game if I could only have one franchise. It'd be Resident Evil.
Really?
Yeah. It's just so good.
Well, I mean, you're super into horror, so I can see that. I think that this was easier than I thought as well. I'm with Rich. I'm on the right-hand side. First-person shooter, adventure, and platformer. I do like first-person shooters, but it's the adventure and the platformer games that I like the most. Like, Zelda's my all-time favorite game.
Cool.
I can't not have Zelda. Although one thing, they said action adventure. Like, I don't know of an adventure game that's not an action game. Do you know? Like, I don't know how that works.
Both action and adventure are very tricky terms, right? Like, in terms of
like
genres.
when I hear adventure, I go to like point and click. Like
Full
Throttle or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that never even occurred to me. Point
Grim Fandango.
But he did specifically put Breath of the Wild in adventure and God of War in action.
Me. He had white. He just had white background with black text, so I just made it look nicer.
Okay, I like the idea of Breath of the Wild being an adventure, right? And when I think of it that way too, like I like the genre mix-ups in the right column because I get adventure and platformer. That to me is Metroidvania. So. All over that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I didn't even think about like what are the combination.
Yeah.
Like looking at this list right here, like what's a combination that doesn't exist that should exist? Like an RPG platformer or a first-person shooter. First-person shooter puzzle would be
Talos Principle and Portal.
Yeah.
And
Portal. Yeah,
The
that's
Witness.
what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
You could do like FPS CRPG. I don't think there's any of those.
It's literally just
was.
like somebody sitting at a computer
Yeah.
to play and like you are playing, like there's on the screen, there's a mouse, there's a keyboard, and you are in first person doing the things on the keyboard. You're playing as the game player.
Did you guys play the new Vietnam expansion for Baldur's Gate 3? Like, that's what I was...
The what?
What?
No, like,
That's the example?
they do an expansion. It's an FPS.
That'd be fire.
Oh
I
my
would certainly
goodness.
play that. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast. Thank you for sending in that question, Basil. I appreciate it. Rich, tell us what are you working on?
Yeah, so I'm working on a news video that should hopefully be out tomorrow. I'm pretty far behind on it, but hopefully I can get it out by tomorrow or I guess by the time this drops, which talks about like FSR 4, the Steam families. So there's actually a good bit of news this last week. So I'm excited to get this one out there.
Very cool. Jimmy?
I'm doing the same thing as Rich. And then I'm going to do a video on PS Ready this week, I think, where I'm going to... Because I've been talking about how the PS2 emulator sucks that they just made for the classics, but I want to explain why. So I'm going to record some footage and just kind of like break it down, why it's like half-assed, not very good.
Yeah.
Very cool. So make sure that you head on over to youtube.com/deckready, youtube.com/psready, youtube.com/fanthedeck, and subscribe to all of those channels and subscribe here before you leave. But that's going to do it for us from this episode of the NerdNest podcast. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.